I want to talk about staying in your lane, size, space, and weather on this segment of the Gig Geezer. If this is your first time checking out the Gig Geezer, if you're a returning visitor of the Gig Geezer, hey, thanks for coming by. And if you would not mind, hit that subscribe button, give my content a thumbs up, share my content among others, and I definitely welcome your comments in the section below. This segment of the Gig Geezer is based on a question posed by a subscriber, Bossman Rich 28. I thank you, Bossman Rich, for subscribing to the Gig Geezer channel, but also posing the question that you did. Now, he shared that he sees opportunities by working out of his Chevy Silverado 1500, but there are not money-paying opportunities based on the size of his vehicle, or that are kind to what I'm making out of my Sprinter/cargo van. And that's something I'll broach about later in this segment of the Gig Geezer. He says he realizes that working multiple apps is an avenue that may enable him to make more money. And I agree with you. It's all about working multiple apps, stacking orders, and stacking multiple orders across multiple apps. And now he also mentioned that he's not yet ready to venture into the ownership and operation of a Sprinter/cargo van. And I understand for whatever reason why he may feel that way. But before I go any further, I want to acknowledge some folk with their YouTube channels, and they're also subscribers of the Gig Geezer. The first one is Saint Mike 504. Saint Mike 504 is based out of the Denver, Colorado area, and recently he completed a transaction for a Sprinter/cargo van, and he's trying to step up his game. The next one is Dad Dash Industries. His channel address is Dad-13. And by the way, Saint Mike's channel address is Saint Mike 504. Now, Dad Dash, he's a proud father of 3 sons, and he works primarily gig food delivery apps. And he describes in his profile how he's transitioned from running a multi-million-dollar business to working primarily DoorDash, Grubhub, and Uber Eats in his market. The last person, he's a familiar name that I've mentioned in the past, but also he's got a familiar presence already, and that's Uber Jeep AZ. That's Uber Jeep AZ. That's his address. His name is Jay Watts. He's a former track athlete, a former corporate accountant, and he's the current president of the Uber Don't Fuck With Me caucus. Now, the thing he advocates is about us drivers knowing our worth, meaning that we just don't take anything that these apps give us. And that goes in, that is my mantra about accepting less, earning more, is very much in alignment with what he's talking about. And he also shares content on vehicle maintenance and repairs, and he also incorporates some business 101 and accounting 101 principles. So check out these guys' channels. Again, that's Saint Mike 504, Dad Dash Industries, and Uber Jeep AZ. Now, this segment of the Gig Geezer is not about me bragging about my having ownership and operating out of a Sprinter/cargo van. And again, what I'll be sharing with you are some of my experiences having worked my way up to a Sprinter/cargo van, but also my experiences that may be very pertinent to what Boss Rich is talking about, and also just as a reminder to everyone about the importance of really staying in your fucking lane. Now, I've mentioned that I started in the gig economy in September 2016, and I started with doing rideshare, and that's the Uber and Lyft apps. And the vehicle I used starting out was a 2009 Ford Taurus with 176,000 miles, and I used that vehicle through November 2018. And I used that vehicle through November 2018. What caused me to get out of that vehicle was when Bambi ricocheted off of the front end of my Taurus, and I ended up having to get another vehicle the next day. Now, to that point, I was obviously active on Uber and Lyft, and I had just become active on Roadie, and I had not yet become active on Amazon Flex. The next vehicle I operated primarily was my 2011 Nissan Maxima. By then, I was active on Amazon Flex, and I'd also been onboarded with DoorDash, and I was onboarded with the former Postmates, which is now a part of Uber Eats. I continued working out of that vehicle until April 2020. And as you see here on this inset, you'll see why I say until April 2020. That's when, of all fucking things, Bambi did the same damage to my Maxima as it did to the Taurus, but on the other side of the vehicle. And by then, I had already added Grubhub, I'd added Instacart, and Uber Eats was about to enter into the equation again. Now, when all that occurred, it was right at the beginning of the shutdowns, and so I didn't think about capacity of vehicles or staying in my lane. I was just trying to work the food apps for all that it was worth, because there was so much money out there to be made at that time. I replaced the Maxima with then a 2018 Pathfinder, and the Pathfinder really didn't open up doors of opportunities, at least immediately. It just allowed me a little more space to put things in. And it kind of felt good using that vehicle when I would practice. Well, the bowling alleys were closed though, but eventually when I used the Pathfinder for when I was bowling, I could put 3 or 4 bowling bags comfortably in the back of my vehicle. Didn't have to worry about them toppling over each other and shit. And I felt kind of cool driving to a tournament in my Pathfinder. But the biggest opportunity that really came available for me with the Pathfinder was when I got on doing the personal vehicle program with Federal Express. In fact, the guy whom I deal with now, the contractor whom I deal with now, he was just a supervisor for another contractor, and he told me he loved pickup trucks with the cover in the back and SUVs, because the SUVs allowed you a little more space, a little more size to carry the parcels, and also it was very convenient because you didn't have to worry about weather, you didn't have to worry about any rain on the parcels and the boxes. But the main thing was that since it was used during peak season or during the holidays, you were able with some competence to load up a 100 stop route in that vehicle. It wouldn't be like and you could do it with some sense of operating your vehicle with a semblance of safety. Whereas if you're using a personal vehicle like a Taurus, which is what I have, you may run the risk of running into safety issues, namely not having access to your not having visibility with your mirrors, both your rear view mirror and on your passenger side mirror. So anyway, that's enough said there. But I operated the Pathfinder until July 2021. At that time, I traded out of the Pathfinder because I had issues with the continuous valve timing mechanism. It just went bad. I thought it was a timing chain issue, and it wasn't. Thought it was some sensor issues, and it wasn't. It was something dealing with the continuous valve timing issue, which caused the vehicle to run like a fucking tractor. And so what I did was I absorbed a lot of negative equity, but I got a vehicle that I wanted, which was the F-150. Now, all along, my daily goal in terms of working gig apps was $200 a day. And that didn't change with operating a F-150. What did happen though was that I added a few more apps, namely Waiter / Bite Squad / ASAP and Point Pickup. And the other thing was that I had not yet gone after the other main last mile apps that are at least available in my market, being Freight, Curry, and Dispatch. But the F-150 afforded me opportunity to handle larger catering order opportunities on the Delivered app. In fact, this segment of the Gig Geezer was my first big catering opportunity, which was like $1,700 if memory serves me correct. In fact, I handled one up to $2,000 in my F-150. That was an example of having a larger vehicle, more size, more space to handle more items, and also weather was not an issue with handling the catering opportunities. But the F-150 gave me priority with certain point pickup orders as well as roadie orders. Now, I will say this much. There is no trick, there is no magic bullet about what I'm sharing. The fact is that I know there are people out there who are putting in for opportunities that are not using the correct vehicle for certain order opportunities. At the same time, those are some of the chances that I took in working a personal vehicle and also in an SUV and also in a pickup truck. But I will also share that I never had to put back an order. I never had to throw back an order because I was not capable of carrying those items. But the risk was in how I carried the items. And this is what I mean by staying in your lane. Now, I'm going to give you some personal examples, but I'm also going to start with this example because of today being Wednesday, June 28, 2023. Now, I had a fucking shitty day today, and I ended up just working half of a day. I pretty much benched myself and then came off the bench to handle a couple opportunities. At least I was able to handle a couple opportunities. The main one was a roadie opportunity in which I transported 2 semi-truck radiators 45 minutes to a town called Bishopville, and that opportunity paid $70. What distinguished this opportunity from others is that it was the fact that these items were loaded onto my Sprinter/cargo van by forklift. Now, the guy at the shop told me that someone showed up in an SUV and had to throw it back because he could not handle a pallet being loaded onto his SUV, number one. And number two, he said, well, can't you take it out? Can I just load the radiators into the vehicle? And he's like, hell no, you can't do that. That's why I asked for a goddamn truck or Sprinter/cargo van, because you're handling fucking radiators. Radiators are, I mean, depending on the type of radiator, if it's an aluminum radiator, you can't handle it just anyway. You can't have those bouncing up against each other because you can fuck up a radiator. And that's going to cost the company time and also money, and also piss off their customer as well. But so what happened was someone had actually, obviously someone in the SUV showed up and had to throw back the order. And this is a very common occurrence with a lot of order opportunities on many of these last mile apps. A person thinks that they see the money, they take a chance on thinking that this is something that they can handle. And all you're doing is pissing off the people who are setting up the order, and you're embarrassing yourself because they're going to remember you the next time. If you show up, they're going to tell you that we're not going to let you handle it because you showed up in the wrong fucking vehicle. Now, if you think I'm bullshitting you, I promise you, these are conversations that I've had with people at various places. In fact, one common reaction is when I show up, and if I show up and it's like I'm the second or third person to show up, they're like, I am so glad to see you. At least you read the goddamn instructions. You have the right vehicle to handle this stuff. And this is also common with certain tire orders. I've shown a couple of examples with how I like to see someone carry a set of Bubba tires in a Toyota Prius or in a Crown Victoria or in certain SUVs or in certain small pickup trucks. You know, I've handled as many as 7 tire orders, and part of those orders was an order of big ass Bubba tires. The matter is that I had the right size vehicle, I had the right type of space, and if weather was an issue, it wasn't an issue because of the vehicle that I was using. Now, I'm going to give a couple examples of all those being incorporated and how I kind of lucked out in handling these loads, but at the same time, it did prove costly at least once, and it may have cost me a second opportunity along the way. Now, the first one that I'm going to talk about was a couple of opportunities I had in January 2021 with the F-150. There's a medical manufacturer here in the Columbia, South Carolina metropolitan area that said that needed a larger vehicle, truck, SUV, what have you, and my F-150 happened to be large enough to handle this pallet of medical equipment. The problem posed, though, was not that the F-150 did not have the right space to handle it. It was the fact that the pallet was exposed to the elements. It was exposed to the wind. And while there was shrink wrap around the equipment and all, that shrink wrap started to fray and rip off while I drove from Columbia to Winston-Salem, North Carolina. And I don't think that was an issue with me getting the second opportunity, but I think ultimately the people did not go with, we had actually discussed about my being called upon to transport pallets up to Winston-Salem as necessary or other locations. But I think that they were concerned about, with me using F-150, their items could be exposed to weather. Their pallet could be damaged because of the wind, and that would not have been an issue had I had a Sprinter/cargo van or even a box truck. Now, with the pallet being also, now I have a soft tonneau cover that covers the bed of the F-150, but because the pallet is standard 4 foot wide, but also about 4 foot high, you can use a tarp, but the problem with the tarp is that it's got to be properly secured, or the tarp is going to start flapping all over the place as well. So that I may have lost what amounted to $170 transport opportunity if at least it was going to Winston-Salem, because of my not having really the desired vehicle that they were looking for on a consistent basis. The second opportunity cost me literally an insurance claim. While I may have shared on that particular day that I was able to stack a catering opportunity with a roadie opportunity that paid $197 transporting some 3 heating and air units up to High Point, North Carolina. The problem is that it cost me a rear window. The 3 heating and air units were forklifted onto the F-150. We kind of positioned them and all to where they fit in somewhat securely, but to ensure that they didn't move anywhere, because I really couldn't close the tailgate on them. The third heating and air unit was sitting squarely on the tailgate. So I tried to use some bungee cords to kind of keep everything secured in. But in the process of doing that, one of the cords snapped. So that cost me an insurance claim, and my insurance rate's going up about $50 the next time around. But then again, me being an insurance agent, I was able to find a way to actually lower my rates despite the insurance claim. That's another story. The fact of the matter is that had I had a Sprinter/cargo van, I would not have had that issue. All 3 units would have fit inside this cargo area and never would have had to worry about a bungee cord holding them in. In fact, I could have used ratchet straps if necessary. In fact, that was the other thing. I didn't have ratchet straps. So I just showed up happy jappy slappy like a dumbass thirsty in some respects, lucking out transporting 3 heating and air units. But the second time I showed up there, and that was on this segment of the Gig Geezer, now I had the right type of shit. In fact, I handled a 400-pound commercial heating and air unit. It was loaded on by forklift, and it was taken out by forklift. And they were so glad to see somebody having the correct vehicle in the first place, but also arriving there on time. I'm sharing all this. I've shared all this to point out again, or stress again, the fact that you also need to stay in your lane. While you want to earn more money, you cannot trick these apps. You can trick these apps some of the time, but you can't trick these apps all of the time. At some point, certain occasions are going to catch up with you, and it may be the one that costs you in the long run, because these places will remember you. And again, what will happen is that if they see you, they may tell you, we don't want to deal with you because you showed up here with the wrong with the wrong vehicle in the first place. Having the correct size vehicle allows you to transport items knowing that you have the right space to transport the stuff in. You don't have to cram it in or make some adjustments to accommodate the item that you're transporting. A good example, and I'm using one that Steve told me about. And Steve is someone whom I've mentioned a number of times. He is a fellow sprinter slash cargo van owner here in the Columbus, South Carolina metropolitan area. He told me how someone had showed up to pick up, and actually there's two examples now. The first example is that he told me how someone showed up in a car trying to leave from Walmart with a 65-inch TV. And he says, "Oh, well, let me take it out of the box, and I'll put the TV inside, and I'll put the box on top, and when I get there, I'll just be real nice about putting the TV back in the box." And the Walmart person told him, "You can't take it out the box, man." Another example is someone showed up with a Crown Victoria recently, and they told him, "We'll let you take it if you get some bungee cords and ratchet strap." And the person went on and got a fucking bought ratchet strap and bungee cords, and basically paid Walmart to transport the item, because the item probably paid no more than $18, $19, but the person spent almost that much getting bungee cords and ratchet straps. So was that really a smart move? It may have been a smart move for that person possibly down the road, but it certainly for that opportunity wasn't a smart move. That's not staying in your lane. That's a fucking dumbass thirsty decision. Case in point, I have been very quick to learn my limitations with this sprinter slash cargo van. A lot of it is based on weight, and in my case, I know of some water transporting water pallet load opportunities, and some of these places want you to carry multiple pallets. I know that I can handle one pallet. I can't handle two pallets. That's 4,000 pounds. That is way beyond the recommended weight maximum. In fact, the weight maximum for this van is 3,600 pounds and change, like 3,675 pounds. But I consciously limit myself to 2,750 pounds because I don't want to put any strain on my engine, which can affect the transmission, and I don't want to fuck up my suspension by carrying too heavy of payloads. And that's another thing that you have to deal with when you try to gamble taking stuff that you really shouldn't. Another good example is if you get like a Home Depot or a Lowe's order opportunity and you're transporting mulch or potting soil, it may be a pallet of potting soil, 70, or even Tractor Supply. That's another place that may have that stuff. You may end up having a 6-foot high pallet of 50-pound bags of garden product, okay? And you may talk them into just breaking down the pallet, but you got to put that shit in your vehicle, and you run the risk of straining your affecting your transmission and your suspension if you're using the wrong size pickup truck, and definitely if you're using a fucking SUV. That shit ain't gonna work. So that's why if you stay in your lane, you don't run the risk of these type of issues. But again, I'm just sharing with you a different perspective of things. Maybe it's not the perspective that people want to hear, and I'm not gonna apologize for it. But if you take those chances and shit goes wrong, you'll remember this segment of the Gig Geezer. And with that, if you happen to like this segment of the Gig Geezer, hit that subscribe button, give my content a thumbs up, share my content among others, and I definitely welcome your comments in the section below. I'm Inwood Lane, and as always, may your grind and may your hustle continue.